Our speaker today is Jennie Slossberg of Garden Angels. And I'm happy to introduce Jennie. I met Jennie, I guess about 6 years ago, when I was looking for somebody to do landscaping on our property when we finished our renovation. And I spoke to someone who did lawns and hardscaping, and he recommended Jennie. It was the middle of the winter. Jennie came over. We walked around my yard. I told her what I was interested in. I went in the house, and for the next hour, Jennie stood outside and sat on the front steps and drew pictures and made lists. And then a month later, sent me a long list of native and other plants for the yard. Since that time, Jennie has been not just a gardener for me, but she's also been a teacher. I've learned to garden because of what Jennie has taught me along the way. So with that as an introduction, here's Jennie.
Yeah, I guess we have that space.
It's a pretty long cord. Let's see what's going on. Is that good enough? That's it. Okay.
That does. Okay. All right, I'm going to find my presentation. So I combed through lots of pictures so that my program could be visual, which is what gardening is. And along my journey of gardening, for about 20 something years, I've had this business, and I started gardening with a few people on the island who worked in their yards, and I assisted them. And so I was able to learn hands-on, and then worked with another gardening company, small, and just decided to go out on my own. And so trial and error and trying again and learning the hard way, and just falling in love with things and plants and taking my cues from nature and just trying things, and is how I've kind of come to this slideshow, which my son, who's almost 12, helped me put together. So he threw his name in there. Is this on? You guys can hear me. So I wanted to start with the introduction, coming to your property, coming to your home. And this first image I have is a video because it really belongs with movement. What's inviting about this house and the breeze, and it's summertime, and it has this beautiful walkway that is alive and inviting, hopefully. So entering through, oh, he said I have to stop that to go forward. My tech department. So as we arrive at a property, we want it to be welcoming, we want it to be intriguing, and we want it to maybe create privacy. Each property has its own secrets and delights and issues that needs to solve. So these are a few small and intimate places, or grand, and whichever it is, there might be wind exposure. The first thing that we have to, like I did at Susan's, was start to get a sense of where the sun is when it moves around the property. Is there wind exposure? Is there good drainage? Is there a lot of acidity? What are the bases for our plants, and how do we make them happy, and where are they going to struggle? How are they going to thrive? And how can we assist? So each opportunity with each property and each client has challenges with not only people's aesthetic and their tastes. Some people want symmetry, some people want natural, some people want low maintenance. It just takes time, and learning about those things will help you guide to your choices. And what I always encourage people to do is get inside and then look out. So when you're inside your house, where do you spend time, and over what seasons? So you might be thinking of outside and what your neighbors see, but really you want to enjoy it yourself the most. So where are the places where you sit with your coffee, your tea? Where do you have the end of the day? Where is it super hot and that you need shade? What about where you park? Is there headlights that need to be addressed? Do you want to quiet the street if you're up close to the street? All of these little issues can be solved if you kind of know where you want to start. So since this is the season we're in, we're all inside trying to stay cozy and doing all those, cleaning out those corners and organizing. And I wanted to show you some of the things that I've added over the seasons on my property. The west side of my property has beautiful beech grove on the side, and I've just put a row of the Ilex reticulata, which are native, and all winter long, I am enjoying that the birds are coming for the berries right outside my living room window. And facing the north, I have this little pine that birds will land on, and it has cute pine cones. So just trying to add things over the seasons, not just like what I see as I get home or move around my property, but when I'm inside, how can I enjoy and create things that are successful? So here's a few other winter interests. This is skimmia with the little bit berries that is really pretty, and the low grower. This is crab.
Jenny, we can't see any of what you're showing us. Are you sharing your screen?
You need to share screen.
Oh, we need to.
We haven't seen anything except for
Oh no,
your
they haven't seen it.
nest
Okay.
face.
That was something our tech department was going to help us share. I'm sorry. How do we find out? We're getting our helpers. Thank you for telling us that. Let me go back. Let's see. Yeah, they're not seeing whatever's on Zoom.
Where is the Zoom? Share screen. Ta-da.
Ta-da. How's that?
And then. There we go.
Okay. Are you able to see now my Zoom people? Okay. Yes, okay. So this,
Thank you.
so we're looking at now the red and the yellow twig, which, because we've been learning, about how to invite wildlife to the yard, and also there's been something going on with the birds and the bird feeders and this virus. I followed some information saying take down the bird feeders in the summer. I came to enjoy the fact that the catbirds were taking the white berries off of my yellow and red twig shrubs, which I had no idea they ate. So here are the winter berries right alongside, grow in the shade, pretty easy going. This is this other winter interest, skimmia, a crabapple, and a beautiful robin who's there getting berries. So other winter interests about to bloom now, we have the witch hazel. And I also wanted to share considering trees and for their bark, like birch trees. This is a Stewartia tree just starting to have that texture and interesting bark that makes it something to enjoy. And I always encourage people here to go to Polly Hill and see all her interesting dwarf evergreens and the textures of different evergreens. This is Leucotha, the Gerard's rainbow specifically has this great different patterns on it. And this is a dwarf hinoki that has just such beautiful needles and the way they grow in like little fan shapes. So all kinds of things just outside of your typical evergreen. And here is another sort of fountain-like cedar. This is the Hollywood, I think it's called a Hollywood juniper. Just so beautiful, also providing berries, also providing shelter and structure. So it's nice to have opportunities. So let's have some color. We need a break from the dreary. Moving in and around our house, we have walkways, we have courtyards, we have pathways, and sometimes these are really challenging hot spots or windy locations. This is Chip Chop, Diane Sawyer's house, where this was just a really sandy, weird spot where Rosa rugosa, of all things, wouldn't grow. And because it was so sandy, so we went with the things that could tolerate the heat of this courtyard structure and loved the sandy soil. Lots of native things, Asclepias, mountain mint, yarrow. There are little dwarf 9-barks that take the heat. There are little lime hydrangeas and lots of sedum, and just so nice to see that transformation. Adding water features or just some simple bird baths gives you the opportunity for the reflection of light in different textures and inviting sounds if you're into that, if you want water bubbling and dragonflies, frogs. So we all have some troubleshooting spots. So here is an opportunity to see where we started with that beautiful walkway with just the white Gora. My client loved not that the lavender was purple, but that it was just this uniform thing. But we were struggling with it wasn't thriving. So first we looked at the soil and it wasn't draining. It's a walkway. So it's full of granite and it's full of stone dust. So how can we change that? We added sand, we added new lavender. We tried to make it all uniform. Still, it was being overwatered because of the location of the lawn and the irrigation for the lawn. And we moved on from the lavender after a few years and came up with this Gora, which has succeeded. We have little succulent ground covers all along the walkway where it loves the heat of the stone, and finally we're happy. So I want to also, talk about bringing in natives and having it not always look, mishmashy, that there are all kinds of good opportunities for bringing natives into the garden that aren't just looking like wild fields. All kinds of fall asters. There are multiple kinds of butterfly weed. This one, pink one, is the swamp one that loves the wet location. And there are tall, elegant ones. There are white, beautiful ones. It's just so nice that they're becoming more available and they're being grown locally, and also all kinds of, more people are interested in them. And there's more opportunity to have butterflies and hummingbirds and all kinds of beneficial insects that come.
Jenny, can I ask a question?
Yeah.
About so with the butterfly weed, is it just the native that the caterpillars will go to, or will they go to the cultivars?
Yeah, they'll go to the cultivars. That one was the tall one. That's called Silky Gold. That's a really tall one. The white one is called Icicles. That's not just the short little one we see in the straight tuberosa that we see in the fields. They're so beautiful, and they offer, all these different textures and colors, which is nice. The incarnata is the swamp milk Asclepia. So happy to see so many monarchs. When we're talking natives, I also wanted to share some of the shrubs that work really well here and are also being grown not just as the straight species. So this is a viburnum that blooms beautiful like a lace cap. And on the right up here is the swamp azalea. Smells amazing all through July. Just happened to notice it years ago around Ice House Pond. And in my neighborhood, I see it and smell it. And so I've been incorporating that into gardens where the soil is right. It can definitely handle those wet conditions of our heavy clay soil. And then down here, this is a clethra. This is a short, small version of clethra. So I've been able to use that in landscapes where people are looking for things not to block their windows or be scratchy on their house. Very fragrant in August, and it comes in a pink variety called Ruby Spice that's tall, and it's just a great shrub, just really reliable. And now there are so many varieties there's a lot of opportunity for new varieties because these are really go-to shrubs. So adding contrast is something that just kind of will lead, like when you look at a piece of art, your eye needs to move around the painting, the photograph, and the light and the color is part of what's appealing. So I often get that request, oh, we just want more color, we want more color. And sometimes it's just a sea of green and you need a texture and a contrast, and that you might need white stripes or yellow stripes or purple foliage. And so that is adding that layering into a garden that will make one thing look more beautiful beside another thing, where both of them might be equally interesting, but when they're side by side, they're 12 times more impactful because they're complementing each other with that contrast. So on the left side, I have, oops, I wanted to go backwards. Coral bark maple, which I can see, this is my house right outside this window, which is really nice. It has beautiful red bark right now, all winter. In the spring, it has vibrant chartreuse foliage, and then in the fall, it turns yellow. So it has something for all the seasons, and it looks great when you add purples, reds, yellows, anything around it, because it already is a vibrant small tree, which is nice because it never gets super big. And when I was learning about this tree particularly, I saw that it was used in urban settings a lot in containers because it was tolerating being in those huge pots they use in cities. And so here in these two other images, I have smoke bush, clematis, and the contorted hazel that comes in this burgundy foliage, and the little miniature lilac. Oops. That smells amazing, and is a little bit later, I believe, than the early straight lilac species to dwarf. Oh, it's just going where it wants to now. So continuing with contrast, heuchera, the coral bells, is an evergreen perennial. Kind of gets ragged at this time of the year, but it does stick around as a perennial, which is nice. And I have it next to a fern that has the burgundy, just that light, elegant stem is a really nice thing that leads your eye through the garden. And on the right, next to my little koi pond, I have the Hakinakloa grass, Japanese forest grass, which is so easygoing and I adore it. And it's beside a little weeping Japanese maple, just tons of good contrast and color. And then this is just kind of also for a lot of movement, which we're always looking for. The salix, dappled willow, needs to be controlled because it will get huge, but with pruning, you get to see this beautiful pink new growth. So it is kind of intimidating hacking things back in the middle of summer, but once you do, you get a second push of this beautiful pink new growth. And I have it here just kind of picking up for these few weeks, the pink growth, the pink astilbe, and the pink rose, while kind of we're waiting for the butterfly bush and the phlox and things. Yes. How what? It will get enormous, but you can really kind of choose your right location for it and stay on top of the pruning. Like a butterfly bush, it can get just like feet tall and extremely wide. So I always kind of choose, not maybe every year to hack it back, but every so often. Susan can share.
Yes, Jennie could say, cut it back, don't worry, cut it back. And finally, last February, I was a chainsaw. It was next to my deck, and I cut it down about that high, foot high, and I thought, if it dies, it dies. By May, it was 3 feet tall, and Jennie said, I cut it all the way down, so the branches are much better than they would if you put it in the top. When I do dry on. So it'd be very.
Yeah, and that is something to stay on top of as far as the timing. So if you have that chance to give it a hack in the middle of the summer, it will have the chance to grow those nice weeping branches again, which the following spring is where you'll start. And then you'll, dappled willow. Can take wind. It provides a good, place for animals because it has lots of little branching, arching branch. I see the hummingbirds land on it. It's super pretty, and it's really happy on this island. It's grown in a lot of places. I have one, sometimes I plant them in the tree form when we need that height right away. It's gorgeous. So early spring, let's go through our seasons and find our sequence of bloom. Sometimes where I met Katie at the Harborview, I worked for a bunch of years and I had the opportunity to do containers from starting in March, April, whenever Easter came through to the winter. And so sometimes I have to go to the shrubs because there's nothing else, bulbs, shrubs, and pansies. So here is beautiful flowers growing on the Pieris. And this is a cherry tree, a really early blooming yellow camellias. If they're in the right place, like at Polly's Pen, Polly Arboretum, she has beautiful tall ones. So they need protection. They're a southern plant, but if you can put them with the southern exposure with some safety from the north winds, you can actually pull it off. This is a yellow Hamamelis. I think that one's Arnold's Promise. And moving into spring, there's your magnolia again that are just so beautiful. That's like the star magnolia. I think that's one of the Oriental ones. And the coral bark maple, again, now the leaves are just gorgeous. They're turning into kind of your typical green, but the red is contrast, which is nice. It's a nice structure. And and then the hellebores, which everyone looks forward to. You can see at the bottom of the plant, there's like the Easter egg. So that's like something in the garden to hide your Easter eggs. You know, if you have neighbors or grandkids or kids coming over, it's one of the few things that's just so happy to see. And you trim off the, you know, tattered leaves and these beautiful blooms come up. And so continuing with, some people have that when I meet them, the one color they don't like. Well, if they don't like red, I'm going to convince them otherwise because there are so many great reds. There are so many true blues. And sometimes you need orange if you don't like orange, but it just makes, like I said, the contrast and the complement of the blues or the purples or the yellows much more warm. And sometimes, so on the left, that's a flowering quince, which is always nice to look forward to. And I'm obsessed with this red rose. It's called the Lava Flow. And I just love it also with the textures. It's behind that dwarf hinoki, and it's just stunning, unique rose. Here, just some more yellows, purples. The foliage of this little hypericum is so beautiful, and it's a great pollinator. And then those little yellow flowers turn to those beautiful hypericum berries that we always get in floral arrangements. And it's totally, nothing happens to this plant. It just thrives in the heat, and I never have to fuss with it. It's a really reliable. There's that repeat. I'm gonna have to talk to my tech department. Repeat of the Salix picture. And just some more color and texture. Here's a border with getting into annuals, which I love adding annuals. I think like a 70-30 kind of balance within a border and a garden lets you kind of play with things. Every year, some things work, some things don't. But these Coleus dipped in wine are beautiful and get really big, and they actually flower, little purple flowers, which the hummingbirds love. And so that's been a really successful, pretty border over the years. So adding beneficial things and attracting the wildlife. Out my window in the winter when I'm doing my plant orders and seed orders and all those things, taxes, the bluebirds come for the sumacs that just returned to my property after the construction. Huge sumac tree grew out of nowhere from the disturbance of the site. Seeds got in, birds dropped things. Thank you, because how happy am I on a gray day to see the bluebirds, you know, having a feast. Another thing I've added, because I'm really into the butterflies and moths, is a ginkgo tree, because Luna moths like to lay their eggs on them. And then I have the little koi pond again for the light and the texture and just the opportunity of getting birds that come for drinking and bird baths at the edge, and dragonflies. And Some of the things that resow themselves that are really reliable are here, our annual Verbena bonariensis, always full of butterflies and bees, always resows itself into the smallest cracks in this patio. And in the other slide on the side, I have the Mexican sunflower, the Joe Pye weed that's super tall and beautiful, all kinds of black-eyed Susans. There's the little beautiful Hypericum again, just different textures, always looking for that height and the colors and the things that kind of purples next to yellows, next to burgundies, next to orange, popping out, you know, the white. And it's just fun to have a little bit of everything. And then at the low bottom of the border, we have lots of succulents and things that just travel along and sort of, you need less and less of them as the perennials grow, but they really help hold the soil on. So here's some lavender that is working. Now, why is it working here? This is a raised bed, has fabulous drainage. Next to the yarrow, bright red and yellow, and it just adds with this also this sedum that's variegated, just really nice contrast. This garden is in Oak Bluffs on East Shop in a really big house that people are always driving by. And so I always try to have things that look great from a distance, also to be enjoyed and just kind of make people look, it's welcoming. There's the stairs. My client here loves these Japanese maples. He has 3 or 4 huge, big, sprawling ones around the property, and they're fun to work with. So I showed you the pink magnolia at the beginning in spring. This is my favorite magnolia. For fragrance, we love lavender, and this magnolia has a citrus smell. It is stunning. It's the Magnolia grandiflora. It's an evergreen in the south, and with the right conditions, it will thrive here. So for me, I managed to put mine right behind that little koi pond, next to a retaining wall, in the lee of the wind, so it's facing south, and my house is blocking it. Just, it's huge. It does get broken sometimes from the snow, but other than that, I've had no problems with it. It's growing, it's doubled in size, it's beautiful, it's shiny leaves. And unlike the spring blooming magnolias that have like that beautiful display, and you get a windstorm or rain and it can be all gone, this magnolia blooms a few blossoms all summer long, just keeps going, and it smells amazing. And some more nice contrast and texture. The peonies, which everyone loves, and then you're sad when they're done, but coming alongside them, we have the structure of the little Asiatic lilies, and then Simica fuchsia is that beautiful purple perennial, which I've always liked just for the foliage because it has like that fern-like elegance. And discovered this year, it smells amazing. It has a little bottle brush flower that's somewhat insignificant. It's not super showy, but I didn't even realize it smelled, and it caught my interest. And it also had my praying mantis on it, which I was not so happy about because he was eating all the bees. I had to remove him. And this is just having a little fun with the koi pond. That didn't last forever, but that was an actual water lotus water. And lastly, I want to talk about structures and outside spaces. So this is my outdoor shower, which I built with pieces of locust and stuff that were on the property. It's basically an arbor in the spiral shape. So you walk through the opening, and at this point in the season, it's early, you can see all of the structure of it. First thing that blooms is this really beautiful, simple white clematis. And as you go through the season, it becomes completely camouflaged. It's right next to my koi pond. I love to throw the fish food in, get in the shower, watch them. Super soothing. I have wisteria that is next. The clematis continues. There's a few different ones. And then the trumpet vine takes over, which you have to hack back a lot. And even in the shower, I have some fun hanging baskets, and the passion flower, which I love, climbing up, and the autumn clematis blankets the whole thing, and then just smells divine in the late season. As the trumpet vine's waning, the autumn clematis is going. So having that something for each part of the season to enjoy and to give you privacy. And then the last thing I thought we would talk about is containers. like entrance, how we started with the entrance to the property with driveways and walkways, showing, sometimes just a little something at the front step. Sometimes it's a grander, gorgeous box made of metal. But it's pretty fun to plant all kinds of things. Very into adding fragrance wherever I can. And so I love these standard gardenias at this entrance. And then the little pot on the side is just a little accent, something in a screen porch, just to sort of soften that space. These are some different versions of doing holiday pots. So something for the 4th of July with the red, white, and blue, threw a little flag in there, and then something, that same container I had in the spring for a Thanksgiving when nothing is happening, as you can see in the landscape in the background, just a dwarf evergreen. That's a Cryptomeria black dragon with a lot of cut greens sourced locally, roadsidea as we call it. And then containers for a patio. This is the same property. Over the seasons, like I was saying with annuals, you can play with them. Some worked, some didn't. Maybe we want more blue, less white, more pink. So each year, the garden changes a little bit, pots can change a little bit. And again, there's gardenias for fragrance and other things like just to add the contrast. And it's just fun to do because it's just like a trial and error that can be repeated or changed every season. And it really kind of gives, this patio has 3 on each corner facing the yard. So 6 pots that are really kind of signature pieces of their outdoor space. And containers can also really help in really harsh conditions. This is the Chip Chop property again, where you see it's just dunes and Rosa rugosa, but we have found things that will tolerate that wind and salt spray. This is an early pot that I can see I used, or maybe at the end of the season, heathers, kale, those beautiful grasses. And the other side, it's a really hot pot that's like in a little speaker, one of those really shallow containers that has succulents, that doesn't have a watering irrigation system or anything, and is very challenged that way, but is working because it's just things that don't have those requirements, don't need much water, and are really comfortable being jammed in a little hot spot. These are also for living spaces. One of these is poolside, and the other one, I just love those petunias are so unique. And they work because they're next to these other soft colors that make them pop. They don't seem maybe so sad because they're black, they're beautiful. This is a window box looking out. These window boxes you can't actually see from the ground very well. They really seem to be for the windows to be seen from inside looking out, which is kind of a fun. And lastly, just some fun, whimsical things. This is a bathtub in Oak Bluffs I've planted for years that is just for the neighbors. Like literally, if no one's there, they're just happy that there's something fun in there. And some hanging baskets are always a nice way to add sort of a, there's a table right beside it. That's just something full of color, and instead of growing up, it's spilling down. I think that's it. That's the end. So,
I have a question.
yes.
So I love your outdoor shower,
Mhm.
but I'm curious about how the wisteria and the trumpet vine and the autumn clematis how do you manage that?
Yeah, the trumpet vine is the most aggressive. I think I put in a couple of them, and so I'm actually been sort of removing. I always cut it back to level with all the wood, and I've trying to give equal light. The trumpet vine kind of like makes it too shady. So sometimes in the season, I probably sacrifice some flower to tame sections that shade other things. So I try to stay on top of it, which I don't, but I try to, because it is really hard to, I've had it to the point where I put bamboo across and was letting it cover. And then I was like, there's no light in here at all. This is not good for the clematis. And everything is just kind of on the left, on the north, and more of it's growing towards the south. So I just started to tie it tightly to the top and sometimes cut it back. So it just, I have to minimize the foliage of the trumpet vine. It is so aggressive. It's pretty nice. And I love that yellow one. It's just unique. But it is a struggle always. And that's it. I fenced my entire yard because I was losing the battle. I have to stay on top of it, and I just have like a little bamboo kind of gate that I made. I have to go higher. I had to go out there after the heavy snow and just kind of retie it. I have like a bunch of bamboo stakes trying to go up higher. It's a non-stop battle. I mean, I live up in Chilmark where there's no mercy. I mean, I moved into their backyard, so I get it. I'm putting out a salad bar.
How high is your fence?
I said probably 7.5 feet, and that's not enough. So especially if there's anything that they can jump on and launch over. And the other benefit of being kind of in the woods is the more I can plant near the fence and along the fence on the inside, it's obstructed for them to get past.
So along that same line, when, let's say you have clients of needs, like unlimited needs, what kind of deer solutions do you provide for people like that?
Well, I have a lot of clients that have been using the Deer company, and they've had some pretty good results. Like I've been working with Lambert's Cove Inn, and I've been pretty happy to see things in the garden that are not just shredded. I mean, the deer were eating that gora in that walkway, and they don't eat that. They're eating everything that is on every list of what deer don't eat. I mean, they're eating peonies, they're eating irises, they're starving. So you know, it's tough because they're trying stuff even if they don't eat it. Like I can't go away because I have to stay on top of my deer fencing. I have to ask my friends who pets it, like shut the gate at night. And when the first heavy snow came down, it was stuck in place for like a bunch of days. And I was like, I hope my stuff survives because I've put in tons of evergreens for screening and they're all eaten up to here. And I've tried so many deer fencing just individually over the years, and they push it against it. And so they still are getting to it in all kinds of destructive ways. So it's tough. That's why I just decided it was worth trying to fence the whole yard and see, and I have to walk it. Like whenever it snows, it does help me see if there's been a place where it's coming down or if there's hoofprints. I just try. I'm just trying anything.
What about electric wire?
Yeah.
Do you know anybody who's tried
I know someone that used electric wire a few feet away from their vegetable garden. And so when the deer kind of come up with their head down sniffing and they trip or sniff it, it has signaled them like, don't go to that fence. And that was something I heard about someone in New Hampshire. I don't know. I mean, I'm sure if you like at Tea Lane Farm, she has really high fence. I don't know, but I know that at Morning Glory, the deer got in. Yeah, because I was buying wholesale flowers from them all throughout last summer to do floral arrangements. And they were like, oh yeah, the deer got in and destroyed something. So even with big fields like that, sometimes they try and they have like, you have to go like 12 feet. It's a lot. Yeah. So individually doing stuff is what I do for my clients. And I've been going out to repair things where they have courtyards or just beds, foundation beds, and we try to fence it and just make it as tall as possible and do all this crazy sewing of things and using little barbs and up against the shingles so I can have it, you know, like they couldn't jump over. Like even if the rebar is only 6 feet, maybe the fence goes like this and just kind of creates a less hospitable access. I don't know, always hoping for advice too. I mean, I've been in the post office like everyone talking to other gardeners, and one woman was saying how she could see where they went under her vegetable garden gate and like dragged in the ground and she could see the marks they crawled under. So frustrating. Yeah.
Say about wildflower.
Oh yes, so I've been reading this book. Thank you for bringing that up because that is a request I get a lot. People want, oh, I just want wildflowers. I found a really cool, this book was given to me by my friend Ione, who's looking into restoring the Meadowview Farms meadows. She needs the support of the people in her neighborhood to help pay for it. But I walked those meadows with her and the nature conservatory, some volunteers. And we identified all the invasives. We got a little bit of money from the neighborhood people to remove pitch pines and autumn olive. And we went out hiking and collected local seeds, junipers and sumac and asters and all kinds of stuff, asclepias. And what I learned from this book where he specifically was talking about that is you have to sort of plan for layers over seasons when you get your mix. So you might want to do a lot of annual mix for the first year where you have this exposed earth that's disturbed. And those will come up and fill that space so weed seeds can't get in. At the same time, you want to plant actual plants that will broadcast seed that are native, that will grow, that you see growing successfully in your zone, in your island, in that soil. And those ones might be biennial, so they might drop and fill out some green foliage the next year. And then the year after that, they'll bloom. So the annuals you might need to put in a couple of times just to try to keep the weeds out. But over time, whatever's aggressive and the most hospitable is going to drop its seed. So you just want to keep that from being just the weeds. You know, you want your goldenrod and you want your butterfly weeds. So some things you want, but you don't just want it to be, you know, all Queen Anne's lace and black-eyed Susans in 3 years. So that was one thing I found as a really great approach that he's explaining. Whenever there's this disturbance, like new construction or tilling of a field or prepping a new bed, that's an invitation for the weeds. So the more you can blanket that with perennials and biennials and annuals, that also keeps out the weeds. And then also if they get to go to seed and drop those seeds and they feed the birds and the butterflies, then they'll also broadcast those seeds. So that is one approach that I am hoping to see in practice succeed. That was really helpful. This is a great book. So I wanted to. Okay, here's the book.
Who's it by?
It's by Larry Weiner and Thomas Christopher, called Garden Revolution. So helpful. Talks about all those things I was mentioning, site evaluation, what kind of soil do you have, where do you have shade, do you have afternoon sun, do you have good drainage? So you're planting not your lilacs next to your pine trees because one likes sweet soil, one likes acidic soil, trying to create the best location for each plant for them to succeed. Because you want to have it, you're in love with it, whatever, you want to see it, you saw it at your friend's house, you saw it at the Arboretum. So making those choices and assessments before is less heartbreak. And then the deer and the bunnies. Yes.
You may have kind of answered the question, but for instance, on the Chip Chalk property, you had mentioned the sandy soil, but didn't you need to soak?
Yeah, I'm sure when I put the perennials in, I added some soil, but they had this huge area of all Rose rugosa and it was over their leaching field. So there was like this green lush area. And I was like, why is it out their door? It looks so bad because it wasn't getting the water. And even the more exposed to nature where it's holding on their dune and was like a good choice for that location, wasn't doing well right up against that little courtyard. So I'm sure when we planted, we added a little bit and give it like, you know, but it was nice that we didn't have to, you know, something that grows just all along the road everywhere. The Rose rugosa just looked so sparse and it seemed just inappropriate to me. Such a nice, where they walk past all the time would be not only looking kind of, you know, scrappy, but it's like aggressive and prickly and you get an infection if one of those things gets you. So it was a nice opportunity to kind of turn that space that wasn't successful into something that was pretty.
Any other questions?
What's your opinion of lawns?
Well, I am definitely always up for alternatives to lawns. Yeah. Because there's a lot of, I mean, some people want to get rid of the moss. I would encourage the moss. I mean, even the clover is beneficial in a way.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I understand sometimes an open area for lawn, for furniture, for playing is important, but it is really possible by eliminating, you can use organic things that help get the soil right more for the right, I'm not a lawn expert, like I work with someone who knows about the root systems and, the water table. He knows what to offer people when he's sowing a lawn and seed. What are the things for the heat or the wet or whatever for that particular property? And so he's really good at complementing, he does what he does well. And I always listen. That's the only reason I kind of hear what I know. Yes.
Are there any good options for the north side of the house?
Yeah. I mean, on the north side of my house, I have those winter berries doing well. I have the red and yellow twig doing well. I do have hydrangeas and things like that, because in the summer they're getting the morning sun and then the very end of the day sun. And they are straight north. And there are some evergreens, some, I had the little hinokis. So there are things that can take that wind, are tolerant. Junipers, I mean, it doesn't have to be, it depends on if it's your doorway. My doorway is facing north. So that's always like, everything's in the shadow. The ground doesn't thaw for days. It's all clay where I live. So it tends to be very frozen and in wind whipped. Definitely.
Thank you, Jenny.
Thank you.
Thank you all very much for coming. If anybody wants to become the expert on the tech and setting these meetings up, I would be very grateful, because it seems as if I encounter some new problem every time we're doing it. And we're really trying to accommodate everyone with both Zoom and face-to-face, but it'd be really helpful if we had a tech person. So if you can recommend somebody or volunteer, please let me know. Anyway, other than that, thank you for coming. And our March meeting is virtual, right? And who's the speaker?
It'll be completely virtual.
Okay, it'll be a virtual meeting, so it won't be face to face. And I think, Katie, you have been very excited about who the speaker was, right?
Yeah, his name is Dan Hines, and he's the owner of Terra Nova Nursery in Oregon. And he'll be talking about, he's a plant explorer, and he travels around the world collecting plants and hybridizing plants. And the title of his talk is Garden Gems, and we'll send out some information about it.
Okay.